the celebration.
He was hanging on after that.
He was, but he had a calf strain.
Yeah.
Calves are notorious for really bobbing up in the last 10 or 15 minutes when the pace actually does pick up and everyone's fatigued, and especially when you're chasing a result. It was as much precautionary as anything else. Same with Johnny. Johnny hadn't started a match since I think we played Wellington in round 2.
You must have been pretty heartened by Juninho's form.
Fantastic.
He looked really good. It was back to himself. Of course, he's not playing completely free of injury, which has been much talked about. He's a shoe-in for the finals from here, injury permitting, of course, and he gives you such a dynamic.
He's, look, and I've said, people bag me for not selecting him for a while, but the fact is that Johnny, you could tell by his body language, the way he was carrying himself, he wasn't physically comfortable. And he admits that himself. He said he's feeling so much better now, and you can see it. There's a spring in his step again. There's life in his face. He's not in pain anymore. His shoulder's actually to a point now where he doesn't have to wear a brace during the game. And he's even, as I mentioned once before, considered not taking a painkiller before the game. So for me, that's a great sign. And if you look at how he went for the 70-odd minutes he was on the park last week, that was great that he could go that far. He cramped. His calves tightened up a little bit. And so he was another one that precautionary. I need him this week.
Does he get the best out of Broski? Is that stating
definitely.
the obvious?
You look at the way Alex was brought into the game last week. They do tend to understand. It's one of those unnatural things in a game where you can't. I don't know why Johnny and Broski get on particularly well. It's not that they've played years together. It probably suits Broski. Broski likes the short game. And look, I'll be honest, I'm playing him out of position. I don't think that's his best role, but he's done a great job up there. He's bagged a few goals, so who's complaining?
And playing Melbourne played their part in the game. I thought they were good. They got better in the second half, and Archie Thomas had a great season for them. He's always dangerous. Hernandez was good. When you look at Melbourne, are you glad they're not in the finals?
Yeah, they are the best team outside of the top 4 by far, and they've hit form at the right time of the year. But unfortunately for them,
too late.
Fortunately for us, it was a little bit too late. But look, they were in great form last week, and they played a good game of football. They had a go at us as well, and when you've got guys like Archie and Danny Allsop and Hernandez in the side, they can hurt anybody. So I am glad they're out.
You don't have to come up against any of those type of players. Queensland are a totally different kettle of fish, of course, minus Danny Tiato. Now let's start to, as we talk about Sydney, get you to start focusing on what's happening with Queensland, your opponents. Firstly, Cozzy, you've said this week Danny Tiato is a player that you love, but as a coach, would you be getting sick of the transgressions?
I have to be careful what I say. I've got a few of my own.
You've never been before.
No, look, I actually tried the sign teats while I was in Adelaide. I like his aggression. It's infectious, and you need to be aggressive at times. But, I mean, I think he did go a little bit too far last week. Look, he's paid a price. His team has suffered.
Good left jab, though.
It wasn't too bad.
Cozzy,
it was a quick one.
You talked about the good games, the Central Coast game, the game last week, excitement, goals. Queensland and Sydney has been a completely different story. Are we going to see a different game tomorrow night? Please tell us we're going to see a different game.
The way that we trained this morning, if we can take that onto the park tomorrow night, I think you'll see a few goals in the game. And certainly Queensland, I know I saw Frank Farina on Fox Sports News last night talking about. Is that a good plug?
That's a great plug.
Do I get anything for that?
It's not cash for comment territory, Cozzy.
And he said, you can't play for a draw, and you can't. But they're obviously going to be careful because they are down in numbers. Craig Moore's had problems with injury. Sio's injured. Matty Mackay's got a dodgy ankle. Teats is suspended. Who are they going to replace him with? So, Stewie McLaren, who did a great job for
he's gone too.
in holding midfield before Teats' fitness is
why do you cancel each other out then? Why do Queensland and Sydney cancel each other out?
Look, I'll be honest, a 0-0 at the football stadium in round 2, I set up to cancel them out because they've got such a mobile midfield. We've got a skillful midfield. We're not as mobile as them. We're certainly not as quick as them. So you have to be careful how you set up. Even with Melbourne. Queensland 2 weeks ago, they ran over the top of us until they come across a brick wall across the 18-yard box. We set up to win that game in Queensland because we're looking to try and pick up the premiership. So tomorrow we're going to have a go. We need to win at home. It's a game where I think it's advantageous that we didn't have to travel. Fortunately, Sting rang up the Queensland government on Sunday and said, I want to put a concert on Tuesday. Can you squeeze me in? No problem. So I'm happy with that. I'm glad not to get on a plane.
Well, speaking of that round 2 game that you alluded to, the kids, if we can call them those, Zulo, Cruz, Minikin, most latterly, I think everyone agrees they've been a key catalyst for Queensland. It's been a long time since then, culminating in a subdued performance against Adelaide on the weekend. Championship aspirants can't rely on young players for the whole season, can they?
No, but you expect them to get, eventually they will find a bit of form. They would have learned a lot from last week, because last week was like a finals match for Queensland. There was so much at stake. It wasn't like a home and away game. They had a premiership sitting on the end of that, and 1-0 would have been enough.
And Adelaide looking for pride.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a pressure game last week. Those younger blokes might not have responded. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it. I watched bits and pieces of it when the broadcast was live, but I haven't looked at it, and I'm not even going to use it to think about tomorrow night, because it's not a realistic interpretation of what Queensland are capable of.
You said it was like a finals game for Queensland last week, but it wasn't a finals game. It wasn't a finals game. This is their first ever finals game against you guys tomorrow night. You must be hoping there's a bit of stage fright in there.
Look, certainly. I always don't want the opposition to come here being happy. And if we get a crowd like we did last week, and I think we can, it was a daunting atmosphere last week, and Melbourne showed their experience by not caving in under pressure as well. It was a fantastic crowd last week. We get anything like that again, it's going to be great for us. And our guys actually lifted. It really lifts the Sydney players.
Everyone. It was a great occasion.
They're the best supporters in the country.
They were.
In terms of singing and chanting and the way they get involved in the whole thing, they generate their own
I tell you, we're getting some emails from Melbourne.
They've certainly said.
Melbourne have got more supporters, but the Sydney guys, and I can compare because I've sat on the other end of both. Yeah, with Adelaide.
So pretty good though.
Well, it's all on Sydney Football Stadium tomorrow night. The finals get underway. The minor semi-final first, Sydney versus Queensland, live and exclusive on Fox Sports. You've got the home advantage, Cozzy, supposedly. Explain to me this one quickly before we move on. 29 away wins, 27 home wins throughout the season. What is it about home form? You haven't won many games at home either. How are you going to get across the line on Friday night? Why can't A-League teams win at home?
We've talked about this ad nauseum on and off the field and in papers. It has actually. It was season one.
Season one was
in Adelaide. In season one, we had the same discussions. It was a bit. I think it's because the players actually go away together. They spend time in a hotel. When we're away from home, we get up and have a game of Chevra in the morning, and it's
Circle
ball.
Oh,
right, yeah, I've forgotten what
we actually play one where you keep it off the ground, Robbie, so you're out.
I couldn't have played that.
No. So that all helps to get the players' minds on the job. I think maybe when you're at home, different scenario. So there's lots of other external influences, kids, wives.
Well, there we have a scoop from John Cosmina. The Sydney FC boys will be going into camp before home matches.
Yeah. We actually talked. We were looking to plan that for this game as well, but it was all. Didn't want to change the routine too much because we did so well last week.
All right. Well, John's staying with us. It's time for a break. After which we'll alter our focus to the motion before he got here.
Yeah,
what were they doing
he just strengthened the position.